Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine. So Daniel, I had two cold opens prepared for this episode. I'm going to put them both before you and you get to choose which one I do first because I'm still doing both. One of them is about Space Jam: A New Legacy and the other one is about Britney Spears. Which pill do you take?
Can we talk about how I spilled coffee on my desk?
Oh, we should definitely talk about that. Can I talk about it from my perspective for a second?
Sure.
So,
do a Rashomon thing real quick.
Right the second we get on the recording, or at least on the call to record, I hear him like set his mic up. He goes, "Hey, what's up?" And then like I hear like a tumbling noise and then like a liquid like boom. And I'm like, "You okay, man?" He's like, "I just spilled coffee." It's just like, and it's like really awkward because like I can't help him.
Yeah.
I'm in a totally different state listening to him like, "Oh geez, oh geez," just like, and then his mic just like cuts off.
I am pastor. I can't swear. So.
Yeah. It was actually like stressful, and I'm like, he can see me on the webcam, and I'm like totally nonchalant. So like, do I look like a jerk right now?
You had no expression. Yeah, you look like you weren't sure what facial expression you should have. So you're just kind of like staring forward,
like
just watching me struggle.
Like hearing paper towels, like you're opening them. It's like,
yeah,
but that was my side of the story. What was yours?
It's even worse than that. For kind of full context, I woke up early this morning because my car has a flat tire. So I haven't been able to go to the garage yet to like fix my tire or anything because I don't have a spare. So I had to walk to the church today. So I walked an hour and a half here. And while walking here, like there's this moment where two roads diverge in a wood. Do I just go straight to the office and set up, or do I treat myself and get myself a $2 coffee at the convenience store?
Of course, treat yourself.
I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. It's a long walk. I need something warm for my vocal cords because I'm going to be talking on the show. I did all that. I did my morning praying and listened to podcasts, listened to music. It's been a long morning. So I got the coffee and I was like, okay, this is a good decision. And so I go into my office and I have a typical like absent-minded professor kind of setup. I have like ADHD, so like my desk is covered in two things primarily: really meaningful keepsakes that I've collected for the past like 15 years, and important papers are just scattered everywhere. I have like financial documents. I have prayer requests that people have handed me.
Social security number.
My birth certificate, things like that. And then it's like tons of like drafts and ideas for things we're doing. That's just strewn all over my desk. Plus like my really expensive like books that I have, And so I sit down and it's literally like two things happen. I sit down, I put my coffee down, I move my microphone, the cord from the microphone immediately knocks over my entirely full cup of coffee that I have not taken. I got the extra large, haven't had a sip of it yet. It's hot. And so it just goes everywhere over this antique desk that used to belong to the former pastor who retired after preaching here for 50 years. And so I'm trying to keep the coffee from spilling over onto all of the cords on the floor. I'm trying to keep it from going on the books. I'm like, the coffee's getting all over like my ticket stubs from the first wrestling event I ever went to, a picture of my graduating class, the graduation gift, like a pen and a wood carved thing from my college. Actually, a school gave the former pastor like a commemorative clock that he never used. So that's just on my desk. So I got coffee on that. There's a portable DVD player that's on my desk for some reason. I got coffee all over. Things from Guatemala. I got, oh man, a bunch of stuff. And so just coffee's going everywhere, and I'm panicking, and it's just sticky. And if you hear like a slurp sound, it's because I put my hand on my desk and it got stuck to the desk. So that took 45 minutes to clean up all the coffee. And I'm like, feel bad because you're just sitting there and you're just watching. Well, you can't see me. I don't have a camera.
I think I was playing Pokemon Go. I can't remember, but I was doing nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, I look over and you're just like face down looking at your phone while I'm struggling. I don't have any towels or anything. I had to grab paper towels in the bathroom. That's the headspace I'm in right now as we go into this episode. So if I have an unusually negative review of Loki, that's why.
Yeah, that's right. Loki was great. Then I spilled my venti, and now I'm mad. Why did this have to happen? Why did this timeline have to happen?
Why did the TVA come and help me and stop this Nexus event from happening?
Can't believe it. That might be significantly better than both of my cold opens. But you still have the option to choose which one.
I mean, you're editing the show. If you would have like 30 minutes of just
like strip that out, it's just gone. Fine, I'll pick. The Space Jam one is simple. I have not watched Space Jam: A New Legacy, but there was one comment on Letterboxd that totally that I just loved. It's a no star review, and it just says, "Is this what an NFT is?" It's like, yeah, that's a good one. There's not good reviews at all.
I'm not shocked. Have you seen the clips from the show? I mean, clips from the movie that posted online and stuff.
No, I haven't, but I've heard about them, and they're not sounding good.
It's so strange. It looks like someone made like a parody version of what a LeBron James Space Jam movie would be, because like the big popular clip is there's a sequence where they're like, I think they're trying to pick people for the team or something, but the way they do it is they have a supercut of different movie references all stuck together. So they have like,
is it the one where like the Game of Thrones references in there?
No,
someone like comes in on a dragon or whatever.
I have not seen that.
Or the Mad Max one, where they're just super cut over a scene from Mad Max.
Yeah, Roadrunner is in Mad Max Fury Road, and stuff like that, where it's just like, hey, look, it's Austin Powers and Mini Me, but it's Porky Pig is Mini Me. Isn't that funny? You know?
Did they basically just do You got to know this. What's the movie? It's a martial arts film, but they supercut everyone over top of the film. What is it?
Kung Pao?
Kung Pao, yeah. Where it's like they just bought the rights to the movie and we're like, let's just put a white guy in it. And then they just faked up everything.
For a second, I thought you were talking about something like Game of Death 2, where they had like a body double for all Bruce Lee's scenes or something. And I was like, wow, that's a deep cut reference. There's some of those Bruce Lee movies, the Bruce PlayStation movies they made, some of them, in order to get as much footage of Bruce Lee as they could, included like footage from his actual funeral for like the death scene for Bruce Lee's character.
That's really bad.
So bad. But my point was that Rick and Morty appear in the Space Jam movie is what I was building up to.
Okay.
At the end of that sequence, like they just like throw the Tasmanian devil at like their window and like, we're tired of like Rick Sanchez is retired of experimenting on your weird animal creature or whatever. And they say something like, I don't know, they don't swear, they say something like butts or something. They say something PG because they're not allowed to swear. So it just feels weird because it doesn't feel like the characters because it's Space Jam. And that's the only scene they're in. They got Justin Roiland to show up to record 30 seconds of dialogue. And apparently that's the movie, is there's tons and tons of like sequences like that where they just grab a Warner Brothers thing, throw it on screen for 30 seconds and then move on. And it sounds like a nightmare. It just sounds like a nightmare. Also, the original Space Jam's not good. I don't know why everyone keeps pretending like it is.
The only other cold open I had was just about Britney Spears. Was the don't buy Britney Spears products. She doesn't make any of that money anyway because of the conservatory still going. Good on her for saying I'm not going to do concerts anymore since the conservatorship still is active, but also just observing that taking place, it reminded me and don't worry guys, we're going to get to Loki. It's just I need a place to talk about these things. And you guys, your ears are this place, but the whole
pretty funny cold open so far.
Yeah. The whole Britney Spears thing just makes me think of how the reason people, apart from the fact that Princess Diana was great and everybody kept up with that, part of what made the Princess Diana story so moving and powerful for people is that a lot of women were feeling horrible about the culture and community surrounding them. And they looked up to the royal family for like, if you could get there though, you could reach that fantasy of like success and you'd be treated with respect, only to find out that Princess Diana was not there.
Right,
like she's a beautiful woman. She's at the top of everything and she's still being treated terribly, hates her life and her husband's cheating on her for like a week after they got married. So a lot of it, the reason women were resonating with it is because it was very relational. And I feel like the reason people are so fascinated and keep up with the Britney Spears story is it's the same thing, but with mental health, where basically, what's his name, who made his video on YouTube, Leave Britney Alone, was right. Everyone should have left her alone. She had a mental breakdown, went away, got better. But because of the old stigma of if you're broken, then you're broken now, she's not able to just actually recover and get better. And or she is, but people won't treat her like she has probably because for first and foremost for profit, which is really sick, but also because that's sort of how mental health is treated. And so I wonder if a lot of the reason people are so connected to the story is because they see themselves in her story. She's a woman who's been successful basically her whole life, took off, but then also you can look at touchstone moments in her story where she's having these mental health issues and the paparazzi are just following her around. Like my wife reminded me of one where she basically was having a breakdown, went into a restaurant, was like, can you just keep the paparazzi out? Like I need to recover. And then the restaurant was literally like, no, and just let them come in. So that's where there's these photos of her just like weeping in a bathroom. And it's like, come on, like that's ridiculous. And it's because people aren't taking it seriously that she's having these mental health issues because, oh, I guess she's just a pop star. So like, I guess it's not a big deal. Right. So that's my soapbox. I don't know if some people aren't taking the story seriously because it is I have not run into a single person, frankly, who has not been like Free Britney. I've even had customers at my store just showing up, just saying like Free Britney. And I think it's okay that like the Britney Spears products we have are not selling. I mean, they are, but I wish they wouldn't because she's not getting any of that money anyway. But man, that was brewing in me for the last 2 weeks and I had to bring it up. And so that was going to be another cold open. So I decided to put that with this. So that's that. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I hope this was therapeutic for you.
It was very therapeutic for me because I don't know, man. It's a frustrating thing. And I think it's been frustrating for everybody, but mostly for Britney Spears.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I think you might have been part of this generation, but like for me growing up, Britney Spears was like a giant. I was there for both her meteoric rise to stardom and then her subsequent becoming of just a sentient pop culture punchline in like their late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, there were a lot of, yes. So, I wasn't in it as much as you because I was born 95, but I was still I was probably there for the punchline part.
Right, yeah.
So,
I remember a kid in my third grade class being obsessed with Britney Spears. Like, I remember her being like this massive star, and I remember just like her fall from grace, and then I just remember like her I remember the shaved head. I remember just like every lowbrow like comedy movie and television show, like the late night shows. And the only person who really said anything about it was like Craig Ferguson. That's the only person who said that. Because I think, what was it? Like, was it Nicole Richie, I think she died or something. I think it was her. She died. And then like Craig Ferguson on his talk show is like, we're part of the reason that she's dead, you know? So like, I just remember so I've been able to watch this entire arc of Britney Spears' career and the public perception of her. And I do like that we're getting to the point where we're just like humanizing stars. Like just because she's famous or rich doesn't mean that she's not even big.
Yeah.
But also doesn't mean like there is a trade-off to that. Like, yeah, she has certain benefits in life, but like you can't even go to a restaurant without people taking pictures of you crying in the bathroom. Like, I don't know how much money you had to give me for me to be comfortable with that.
It's sort of like the Justin Bieber thing where like people were ragging on him for just being a 16-year-old that was always being filmed. Like if you were filming me at 16 constantly, like it'd be bad, man. You'd be making fun of me forever. You'd think I was the most disgusting person in the world. You'd be like, where's his parents? It's like, he's 16. Like and he's being filmed all the time. And yeah, because I've seen more humanization of Bieber as well, where it's like people are finally old enough to realize like, yeah, if you were following me around documenting everything I did all of the time, of course I would look horrible or whatever. Enough about Britney Spears. We should probably get into the episode. And by the way, if you're listening to this just naturally, you can always skip all of this nonsense. I put the timestamp in the bottom in the show notes for when we introduce the episode. So like, or the show. So like that Falcon and Winter Soldier episode we did a couple weeks ago, it took like 17 minutes for us to get into the show. And I timestamped that in the bottom. So you can always skip all this stuff. But I guess we should go ahead and introduce Loki now. We have a lot of dead space in here. So as of recording, it's 25 minutes, but I'm sure as of listening, it's probably like 16. But Dan, why don't you go ahead and introduce Loki for us?
After a fairly, I wouldn't say lengthy delay, Loki is the first season, I should say. The first season of Loki premiered on June 9th, 2021. It is a 6-episode. Typically, you call these a limited series, but because it's going to get more seasons, spoilers, we'll just say it's the first season. It follows the titular character Loki, with Tom Hiddleston reprising the role, because who else could play Loki? Specifically following the version of Loki that we saw in Avengers Endgame, who escaped with the Tesseract, following the Hulk getting upset that he had to take the stairs. However, Loki, shortly after his escape, is picked up by a group called the TVA, the Time Variance Authority. They're sort of, let's not mince words, they're sort of a space time police who monitor all the different timelines, specifically given the task of destroying variant timelines that diverge from the main timeline, which I guess for continuity purposes, we could refer to that as sort of the main Marvel timeline. Mm-hmm. Loki is paired up with Owen Wilson playing space and time Owen Wilson. It's very similar to his other characters.
Yes.
However, the reason that they are calling upon Loki for help is that there is a specific variant, an alternate version of Loki running amok throughout the universe and doing something. However, very quickly, this Loki teams up with the other Loki to join them in their quest. And as in typical Marvel fashion, the initial plot that we were introduced to quickly sort of gives way to a larger story involving time and space and the end of everything, and essentially leading up to figuring out who is in charge of the TVA. Why does the TVA exist? And over the 6 episodes, we grow to get to know a more anti-hero version of Loki, I suppose, and we'll sort of get into kind of the characterization of Loki and how they play his character as a sort of he and the other Loki and Owen Wilson discover the true purpose behind the TVA and its existence.
Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand cinematic doctrine. You know this already.
Right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you can gain access to exclusive content like The Pre-Show, which features free-form and Christian-friendly discussions on all kinds of topics, as well as influence the podcast. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Previous movies our lovely Patreon supporters have chosen are To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Hamilton, Onward, and American Gospel Christ Alone. Huh, you guys have good taste. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later.
So, Melvin, what did you think of Loki?
I thought it was really cool. I was excited for every episode as it came out. This is actually the first of the Marvel shows that I was watching week to week, which was really fun. And I was thinking, like, yeah, this is a fun way to watch a show. It's nice to binge a la Netflix style of dropping shows. But I'm saying that as I'm watching Queen's Gambit like one episode every 3 days. So I guess I'm not doing that. It was nice to each week have something to talk about with friends and coworkers. Like I remember texting my boss and like just being like, sorry, I didn't see the new episode. And then we didn't have anything to talk about, but then we had a lot to talk about anyway, because I had seen previous episodes. And what was kind of neat with Loki is that each new episode, it always brought something new to talk about. And so like, even if you were behind, you could still talk about the show. You could still talk about the world. You could still talk about what's going on. And I thought that was neat because some shows, they don't have that much to go into. Like I remember when Walking Dead season 1 and 2 and like 3 were coming out, I was watching that week to week with people. And yeah, if you didn't see the new episode, you couldn't talk at all. There was nothing new to talk about unless you watch the new one. So I thought that was pretty cool that like each episode always had some sort of new nugget to get into. I love the aesthetic of the show. I like that it kind of called on not just like classic sci-fi in the broad sense, because like everybody's imitated Blade Runner. Everybody's done that. And this show overtly does that. I mentioned it in another episode, but they literally have a scene where they go to a raining location with a bright blue neon light in the background and they talk about memories. And so, yeah, there's a lot of influence there. And the show's a lot about memories and stuff. But there's also like kind of the old 50s, 60s aesthetic of science fiction. So there's a scene when they look out a window to see the TVA, like whatever world that is, because it's not like they're not on a planet, but they're like not in space. It's like its own thing. I described it to Kat like it looks like the screensaver from the old like Windows 98, where like the pipes, the clay like pipes are like morphing and making their own design.
Right.
Where like it has a logic system, but it's totally random, but it never impedes on itself. It just looks really cool. So I loved that aesthetic. Even you know what, in talking callbacks to other sci-fi, they had the hallway like Star Trek, where like if you have a curved hallway, you can always make it look like it's a big location, but it's your only set piece. They have a curved hallway like that. I liked how the show went in like I liked how it balanced its excitement and action with its more heady concepts, because the show is a lot about like free will. It has a lot about that. It has a lot about internal value and love. Like a lot of the show is about self-love and whether or not Loki can find love and love himself. It's just good. And I think what was neat is it's just it's compelling. It's beautiful. It's really well performed. Every character I liked. It wasn't like the other shows where certain characters were sort of just there. Like WandaVision is great, but some of its side characters are there just sort of as callbacks to other sitcoms, which I liked. And that's clever and creative and fun. But this show, every single character has something to do and has something to offer and is also very good and really interesting. Whereas like Falcon and Winter Soldier, there were characters that had stuff to do and were important for the plot,
but were not that interesting, aka the Flag Smashers. I just didn't find them interesting. I found them conceptually interesting for what the show wants to talk about, but they themselves as characters were not that interesting. Whereas in Loki, like Sylvie is a great character, Mobius is a really good character, the judge, the leader, I forget her name, but the main, the woman who basically runs the TVA but is not the one running the TVA, she was a really good character, and I'm excited to see where that goes. Yeah, so just a great show. I really liked it. I don't know if I like it more than WandaVision, but I definitely it's just great. And I thought, like, was it the what is that what's the third episode, the planet they go to? It's like called Terminus. No, it's not. Terminus is definitely from a video game I played.
Yeah, it looks like a mining planet.
But it's like it's named after, like, the name is cleverly given to basically mean like the end. I forget what it is. I'm going to look it up right now. Because it's in the title. It's the title of that episode.
Lamentus.
Yeah, Lamentus. So, like, I mean, it's on the nose, right? You're lamenting the end kind of thing. And, like, yeah, even that. Like, it's... Everything in the show is very tight. It's all about its topics. So, like, the fact that, like, characters... There's a lot of end-timey discussion and end-timey episodes where people are in locations where, like, the end is about to happen, and all of that in theme with, like, self-love and self-value, basically putting together, like, the value of existing when things can end. It's just really, those are good topics. Those are good topics for shows, for art to discuss. And I thought that was really cool because, like, the first episode is basically Loki learning that, like, if he were to exist past the events of Avengers 1, he's just going to die anyway, and he's going to cause the death of his mom. He's never going to actually rule. So his glorious purpose never comes to fruition. So not only as, like, a character physically does he die, but also his ambitions die in that moment. And so there's just a lot of, yeah, it's everything in the show has to do with these concepts. And so I loved how that was handled. And so just a good show, really good show, man. I like everyone, you keep talking about it, that everyone online still basically talking about it, especially the fans. Loki as a show, as a Marvel property, just totally outclasses Black Widow, which everyone was also pretty much looking forward to and excited for. Even just some behind the scenes talk. When we were preparing for the Black Widow discussion, I think, like, I was even thinking we need to talk about this now because no one's going to talk about it come Wednesday when the finale for Loki comes out. In fact, most of the time when I put up posts on the website, I have the podcast episode post come up early in the week, and then I like to have a second post come up later in the week that sort of helps revive the podcast in search engines, and it also puts some web-based stuff on the website. So, you know, plugging the Cinematic Doctrine website, cinematicdoctrine.com or cindoc.com, you can find some cool written posts there that are a little different from our episodes. But I had all of that come out before Wednesday, before the Loki episode came out, because my thought was, once this finale comes out, no one's talking about Black Widow anymore. No one's searching Black Widow anymore. No one cares about Black Widow anymore. And that's kind of true. Like, Loki's just great. It's a great show. So, but before we get into other stuff, how are you doing with Loki? Like, how
am I doing?
How are you doing, Dan? How's your heart towards Loki?
I thought Loki was very good first season of a television show. I have some quibbles here and there with it, but I thought overall, I like the setting and the aesthetic of the whole thing. I like that the planet the TVA is on looks like a 1960s, like, Steve Ditko comic book. Like,
super
it has
cool.
It's great retro futurism looking city they're in. I like the premise a lot. I like the idea of, like, a time and space police. They're just monitoring all the events realistically of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in theory of everything that's going on and all the different branching timelines and things. That's a fun science fiction concept. And I love, and I'm just getting into some details about the show. Like, I love Sylvie, the variant. I think she's a great character. I think she's a great counterbalance to Loki.
Super cool.
But I think it seems like they very quickly switched Loki to being a much more heroic character with very little effort. I mean, I think we're supposed to believe that because he's been watching because he watches like the clip show of his life and he just sees how pointless his endeavors are.
Right.
That's supposed to very quickly put him on the path to goodness, which, yeah, okay, I can buy that. For the sake of a television show, I get it. It is interesting comparing that to the relatively much longer character arc he has throughout the films, where following Avengers 1 and then Thor the Dark World, taking over Asgard.
The Skrillex phase, remember? Remember in Thor the Dark World when the trailer was coming out and they show Loki in the prison cell and everyone's like, he looks like Skrillex.
I don't remember that, but yeah, I can see what they're talking about now. He looks like the former from First to Last singer. What's his name? Moody? Something. I want to say something like that. I don't know. No one cares about Skrillex anymore. But, yeah, like,
awesome.
So in the films, you got this sense of like you understood his full character arc, and they're kind of playing off that where like the audience has already seen Loki go through the redemption process. We don't need to drag it out for another show, because then people will try and be like, I've seen some people complain that the Loki of the films is a much more fun, unpredictable wildcard character, while this Loki weirdly comes off almost kind of like not a stick in the mud, but he seems almost like a stuffy shirt, which I get is to kind of counterbalance him with Sylvie, who is more of the wild card. But regardless, Tom Hiddleston is just endlessly charming, and the actress that got to play Sylvie, which, for context, it's revealed very early on in the show at the Loki variant, and it's a great moment. Like, Loki season 1 is built on tons of great reveals and moments where they keep your attention the whole time, where very quickly Loki, because he's smart and he understands himself, is able to track down where the variant is hiding. And where the variant's hiding is itself an interesting idea, where the variant is hiding within end of the world events, which, because of the cataclysmic nature, means that no changes that she makes there gets picked up by the space police, which is a fun idea.
Which is a really cool timey-wimey thing, because a lot of time travel stories are tired and fall apart. It's sort of why like there's only a few that I can think of that like their logic works. Like Donnie Darko's, I feel like the logic is really strong in that one, because it's basically a Nexus event story. And I'm trying to think if there's even just one other time travel story I can think of that doesn't fall apart, because even Endgame falls apart, except now it doesn't. It's like it's weird. Oh, Monica Magica. That's the other one. The other one with a logic system that's time travel and it works. Anyways, yeah, it was just neat. And that being a big plot point alongside sort of like the existentialism of the story, I think was really effective. And of course makes a scene later on in the I think it was episode 4, really, really powerful, because there's a nexus point basically taking place there. But
yeah, getting to that moment is they finally tracked down Loki, and the great reveal where it's like Loki takes her hood off and she is revealed that, oh man, it's a lady, which is such a simple like trick and card to play, but it's so effective here. And because this version of Loki, and this is where like Marvel knows what they're doing, so they know how to write things purposefully just to make fans be fans. And so immediately there's all this fan speculation and fan fiction about like, why is this lady Loki variant a variant? What makes her bad? And a lot of people are theorizing that she was a Loki that was destined to be a good person, and that's not correct. And I don't even know if it's in the show, but like because of the way the character is sort of portrayed, it leaves it open for all this fan interpretation. And then we get into sort of even the more weird off the wall stuff where Tom Hiddleston Loki starts to kind of develop feelings for Sylvie, which is the name of the female Loki. And they get stranded on this like planet together that's just blowing up. And they've tried all these ways to get off the planet and nothing works. And then they have a moment where they're just like holding hands essentially, or not even holding hands. They start like one person puts their hand in the other person's hand. And that alone is such a huge Nexus event, one of these big events that creates a branching timeline, in case you haven't explained it, that the TVA is there to destroy, that even though the world is ending, it's creating this massive moment that they need to stop. And so something about them loving each other is powerful.
The idea of Loki falling in love with himself The idea of Loki liking himself, basically.
Who else could he love? Who else could Loki love?
My wife was joking with me how in 2013 or 12, she saw on Tumblr like a shipping chart, which for those who don't know, shipping charts is you're basically taking characters from a show and drawing lines and saying they're together and those ones are together and they're together and then explaining why they're together. And then she just saw Loki just like circles himself. And it's just like Loki is with Loki. That's it.
Yeah, the Kanye West shipping with it.
It's perfect.
And stuff like that really works. Like, I think,
yeah.
And this is where I am currently very happy with the show. And we'll get into some of the later episodes, which episode 5 of 6 is a standout episode. And then episode 6 is the one that causes all of the fan speculation and stuff. What I'm just going to say right now, though, like, if this is what the show is going to be like the whole time, I'm going to be very disappointed, because
like that it just keeps doing fan speculation producing stuff each episode.
So far, with the exception of maybe WandaVision in some instances, all of these Marvel Disney Plus shows have really felt strongly like 6-hour movies. Like, they just feel like movies stretched out with just like, it's just like the Lord of the Rings extended editions, basically, you know, with all the cutscenes added back in. I think Loki is ripe for a more traditional procedural Doctor Who type show. Like, this would really work as like a 12 episode season where different episodes, Loki and Owen Wilson just go to like a weird Marvel place and deal with a weird Marvel problem, because that's what they are.
Yeah, it felt like that's what it was going to do, because episode 2 is that it's an investigative noir, and then it doesn't keep doing that,
and then it kind of, and I was pumped for that. I was pumped just to see,
me too,
you know, the buddy cop dynamic where Loki's a loose cannon and Owen Wilson's the more like traditional, like play by the rules cop and stuff. And that the Marvel universe is ripe for that kind of thing. Like, there's all these planets and dimensions and timelines and characters they could interact with, especially because Michael Waldron, who's like one of the lead writers in the show, he's a Rick and Morty guy. He wrote on Rick and Morty. And so like that, like it's ripe for that type of thing. So if next season is just like more like world building for the movies, I'm going to be very disappointed by that, because I think you're taking some real potential there and just like kind of throwing it out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But as it is now, I think this show is a lot of fun. It's inventive. I like it looks different. Like, it doesn't have the same kind of bland look that Falcon and Winter Soldier, where everything just looks kind of gray and black.
Even like the Shang-Chi trailer just looks so bland. I don't know.
Yeah, like
it looks
Black
so
Widow
like,
is
colorless.
You know, it looked like a soundstage for a lot of the movie.
Right.
This is colorful. They go to different places. There's different locations, and even if that's just them using the technology they used for the Mandalorian to simulate larger places, it works. And the characters are fun, and the implications and ideas are so much more interesting, because it just feels like a weird science fiction show. Even if it never reaches its full potential, there's stuff there. And of course the characters are great. So before we get into more spoilerly stuff, I'm just going to say, like, so far this is one of the best things they've done. Like, this rivals some of the Netflix shows for me as far as much as I enjoyed them.
Like the Netflix Marvel shows, you mean?
Yeah, like I think Jessica Jones season 1, I still think that's my favorite thing. I think overall Daredevil as a package is still, I like that better than this, but Loki has that potential. Like, if they do some weird and wacky stuff in seasons 2, 3, and 4, or however long it goes, this could be really something special. So yeah, I mean, do you want to get into later episodes or anything? Or
I figure there's like, I guess like 2 or 3 touchstones that I figure people listening want us to mention. One being the whole
alligator Loki
and biting off the hand. That was awesome.
The fan favorite character that they're making all the fan art of.
Yeah, I rewatched that scene too. Like, seconds after it happened, like, he gets his hand bit off. There's this brawl that's actually not as interesting as I was hoping it was going to be. And then they escape. And then I said to my wife, I'm going to watch him bite his hand off again. And then I just rewound it. I didn't even finish the episode yet. I saw it twice. I loved it. It was great. But you could tell that they like sped it up really quick, because they were like, I don't know, it might be too violent for this for these kids to watch.
Or the puppet might not look great. I don't know.
Yeah. And then it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a great scene.
That whole sequence is, to me, like, that episode is kind of the best of the entire show. Like, for those who, for context, like, Loki actually, so there's a thing that happens when the Time Variance Authority gets rid of you, which is they just hit you with like a big stick that they were these.
Yeah, they don't have guns. Why don't they have guns? Like, I figured it could be that they don't have guns because if you're shooting a projectile that does that and you miss, you're just teleporting things around.
Imagine?
Or it's like, because if you like fired a projectile, it would just affect the space and time in front of it.
Right. When the laser just keep going, in theory.
Right. And then you just have like an eternal, like, warpy thingy.
Or maybe there's no Second Amendment in space. Who knows?
That's right. Freedoms. There's so much freedoms in space. This is what I'm telling you, man. This is why Jeff Bezos wants to go into space. This is so they can murder someone and there's no law to prevent it. It's the most dangerous game in space.
That's a movie. That's a movie pitch right there.
That's just Ad Astra.
I think it'd be I think it'd be neat if they had like some of the like goofy looking like Star Trek laser phasers or something. I think that'd be really fun.
Set phaser to timey-wimey and
set phaser to prune. Yeah, but so like up to this point you just kind of assume that it kills people, but it really just sends them to like the junkyard at the end of time where a giant beast just eats them. It's like the weird monster in the trash dump in Star Wars, and Alioth is what he's called. And it turns out that like all the Lokis that have been sent there all survive because Lokis are the cockroaches of the universe, I guess.
They just can't freaking die, yeah.
And so first off, this is great because in the background, there's all this like pruned junk, but it's stuff from like the comics, like they have the Thanos copter.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, isn't that the freaking Thanos copter? Yeah.
Yeah, there's fun stuff like that. There's a helicarrier. There's, all that kind of stuff. The head of the Living Tribunal is there, which is wild. But most importantly, like all the Lokis are there, but it's like they really take advantage of the idea here where there's Richard E. Grant, the great Richard E. Grant shows up as the classic 1960s Loki. There's Kid Loki from the comics, who in the comics, he declares himself the king of the outcasts. So when they later mention that, that's a thing in the comics. But both Frog Thor Throg is briefly seen, as well as Crocodile Loki. And so all these Lokis are just there. And it turns out later as they're in the hideout, where it includes a Polybius machine, which is hilarious in their hideout. All the Lokis just take turns trying to overthrow and backstab each other. So they're just roving kings of Lokis, just betraying each other over and over again. And it's a great moment where like you see Tom Hiddleston Loki is just sitting there and you just see him getting fed up. Like he has a moment of just like, this is what I am. This is what I do. And he's just there in his suit with a tie as all these Lokis who look like Mad Max people just attack each other. And it's this moment of like, that was one of the biggest moments of self-reflection in the entire show, where he's just like, oh, this is dumb. This is what my life is. It's just this endless series of backstabs and they like shoot each other and it's great. And then Richard E. Grant Loki is like one of the more enlightened ones. He's like savages. They all constantly betraying each other, and like, it's just that stuff is like the more off the wall, like, okay, this is what I want from the show. Like do more weird things, like embrace embrace your own premise and what it like entails, It's a great episode.
Yeah, and it's a really creative, fun way to talk about its themes of existentialism, self-reflection. Yep.
Puts them all out good. There. And one's a crocodile.
And it's what makes it fun is it's for the people who don't care for heady stuff like that, for basically like I would say who don't care for art introspection. They just get to watch a bunch of Lokis beat the crap out of each other, including the alligator, who is also trying to overthrow. Like, meanwhile,
there's something for everyone.
Yeah. And then for other people, like podcasting dudes, we get to talk about how it's actually about something bigger.
The real movie critics.
Yeah. The real ones. Yeah.
2 18 to 35 something year old men with a podcast.
Yeah.
With no film degrees.
Yes. So good. No budget.
That's a great episode. Sylvie's there. She chooses to prune herself to go save Loki, which is a great moment of characterization. The big betrayal is that Owen Wilson shows up in a car and it's not his character from Cars. Like what's even the point?
It wasn't even a red car.
Why?
And he never says wow. He never
or ka-choo.
Yeah, come on. This is ridiculous.
Who are these hacks writing the show?
Season 2's got to do it. I guess like another thing that apart from Crocodile Loki and all of the Lokis is There's episode 3. They mentioned that Loki's bisexual, and apparently that made people on the internet, some people mad, some people happy, and then other people who are just Loki fans just go, "What did you expect?" Like, it's Loki, of course.
I didn't really see anyone be mad, to be honest with you. Mostly people are just because it's a thing that like the character does in the comics, so everyone was just like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah, what a surprise. Okay. Yeah, I figured for me, I mean, I told you this. I was like, what a surprise. A character who hates himself and hates others, but is still trying to like feel good and live life, is now exploring different ways to do that and still feels terrible anyway. So like, he just perpetually feeling horrible at all times. I mean, that really feeds into his soliloquy with the dagger in episode 3.
Right. Yeah.
Where it's like, love doesn't exist, and if it does, it just stabs you in the heart, kind of thing. So like, it's just a perpetual unhappiness. So of course he's done all kinds of things to try and feel better about his life. It's not a surprise at all.
Yeah, I think it's the reason that like this didn't cause as much of a ruckus as other things is like for the people that like would have a problem with like a mainstream character not being heterosexual. Like with Loki, it's like he already like committed genocide. So
yeah,
I mean, like
if that didn't upset you.
And then, but he's also like a cool roguish character. So for the people who were looking for representation, like he's a cool character. So that works. But it's also not like forced in the sense that it's like they just took a character and were like, they need to like blindfold themselves and throw a dart and be like, all right, that one's gay. This is in the comics. Loki is essentially, I guess you call it omnisexual. Like he has had relations with all kinds of aliens and animals and creatures,
like Riker from Star Trek Next Generation.
I haven't seen Next Gen, so these nerdy references go.
He's just known for sitting in chairs very strangely and then also sleeping with every alien. I mean, implied. You don't see it.
Those are his two defining features. Yeah, so like I think for that, like that's part of why. I mean, it was a thing for like a day, or like the Kate Herron, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's bisexual, so she went on Twitter and was just like, this was important to me to include this in the character. And so and everyone's like, yes, great, yes, queen, so it was a thing for like a day.
Because I think it was my wife who said she saw there were like some groups where people were not happy about that.
Yeah, it was like universally celebrated / not commented on at all / seen as just a curiosity.
I just figured it's non-controversial because it's a mature story about mature people who have lived mature lives, and that includes sometimes doing things that I don't know, are going to be upsetting to people, including mass genocide. So like, I don't know,
I'm just waiting for the moment when all these people finally jump off Marvel, because Marvel's like, the MCU is much more slow and steady when it comes to representation, partially because everything they do is like cold and calculated, so they don't want to make international any markets upset with anything they do. But it's coming. Like I think Eternals is going to have actual queer couples in it or something.
Well, if they made New Mutants canon, if they somehow put New Mutants in the canon, that would
they're not going to touch that with the tip football. Maybe though, who knows with the multiverse, which is I'm sure what we're going to end up talking about in the end as the multiversal implications. But like, I mean, in the television shows, there's already those characters like Jessica Jones. Jerry Hogarth is like a lesbian. I think there's one or two queer characters in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., if I remember correctly. But yeah, once they finally do it, I'm curious if Christians are going to just wash their hands of the MCU finally.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where the upset probably is in the Christian community. It's because oftentimes it's worry about normalization, but let me tell you, it's already been normalized as of like a decade ago. And television's been always ahead when it comes to I guess you could, television has always been more progressive than movies anyway, because they can afford to do it compared to movies.
Right, yeah. And even if people get upset, they can just not watch that one episode,
Which would be a bummer because that third episode is a great episode.
It's a good episode.
And it's only one line and it doesn't really mean anything other than really the topic of the discussion is about basically they're just depressed. Like that's it. That's the topic of the discussion anyway. I think that's just it. It's just because of the normalization of it. And yeah, it's already been normalized, so it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, my stance on all of this stuff which, I mean, I guess it's not a very exciting stance, is like art and television and film, they're going to reflect the people who make them. They're going to reflect the culture they exist in. And we just live in a world where this is how things are. And so I go to the movies and I turn my television on to see stories, and I want to see stories, and stories typically involve people, and people are all kinds of things. So, that's just how it is. So I'm sorry. Like, it's weird because it's like, if you watched, Christians will watch 50 movies about like hardened vigilantes who take the law into their own hands,
right?
Which is not righteous or good. And but most of the time, the films play those things as entirely virtuous by nature. But like, when characters do things, or they'll even watch things about characters who sleep around or have affairs or have soap opera level lives. The instance you add
homosexuality or abortion into it,
then it's like off. It's like off base. It's then that's crazy. I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know what you like. I mean, I get it. I get the thing of like, well, these shows, they're celebrate it more. They celebrate it more than something like a movie where like a guy shoots 100,000 people. But first off, I would disagree. I don't know if you saw Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but like all of his violence and killing, it's always framed as heroic. They give him the cool music, they give him the cool one-liners. Their actions are always framed as entirely good and commendable.
Yes,
but at the same time, like, I think most stories I've seen that involve queer relationships portray it as things that are difficult or secretive or things that cause them much inner turmoil and consternation. Like, and that's just kind of part of the makeup of being a person in 2021, I think, in a lot of ways.
Consternation and misery. Yeah, I guess so. After 2020, I'll say so. Yeah, I think it's useful for the Christian to be aware of of people's genuine lives. And when you have a story that, like Loki, for all of its fantastical aspects, feels very genuine and honest. It feels like you could sit down and talk to the writers about these topics of existentialism, self-value, self-worth, and individual goals. You could ask them, what is your glorious purpose? And they could probably answer and tell you, like, well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a screenwriter. And now I'm doing it, and I'm not as happy as I thought I would be. And like, bam, now you can start like that. That allows you to get into talking about, like, I don't know, maybe the gospel. It's called evangelism. And it's doing the Areopagus. It's doing what we talk about in our, if you go to our about section on cinematicdoctrine.com, it's engaging the community, understanding it. And you can only really do that when it's honest, because if it's dishonest, everything you say will not be to the actual person. And it's actually to just their bravado, to their mask. And you're only going to get that if you're, of course, hearing things that might be upsetting to you. And just case in point, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but like, I've had conversations with people who have shared with me things that are basically sinful, basically horrible, basically sad, basically painful, basically evil. And in those moments, they're filled with massive amounts of contrition. Or in other times, they may not, and they don't quite know that it's quite so bad. And the worst thing I can do is just like a television program, turn it off and tell all my friends not to watch it. Just be like, sorry, friend, I can never get together and talk with you again. Like, that's not how it works. Now, obviously, it's a television show, and you could do that with a television show, and that's totally fine, because it is important to be careful of what you take in. That's a total wise thing to do. But if you're also trying to, if you just want to have a good time and just watch a good show, because Loki is a good show, I think you can put up with one line about Loki being bisexual amidst all of the other stuff that Loki's done. If you're watching this show, you've watched all of the other Marvel stuff and probably liked him as a character, considering he's still had been a scumbag and a horrible person. I mean, the first episode, they talk about it. They're like, you're stabbing that guy and you're smiling, dude. Like, they're putting it right in front of you, which is a good test to the audience too. It's like, why do you like this guy? He's evil. Like, he's a terrible man. He's just smiles and is happy when he does it. I mean, they're not even talking about Joker. Like, why do people like Joker? The dude's horrible. But people do. So I don't know. I think my wife had observed that in Christian communities, yeah, it was mostly some upset about that. But what a surprise! That was the same with Onward, and they could have just watched the Middle Eastern version of Onward, and they would have been fine because they edit out the one line of dialogue where she says that she has a girlfriend.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not saying that like being gay means that you're a bad person, like a person who destroys a city. But I also think I think it's weird to want to approach anything and be like, I only want to watch this thing if it fully condemns people I don't like and then fully celebrates people I do like. Where I think I might talk about this about WandaVision, where it shows fully, punish characters for things that we think are wrong. Like, should WandaVision have ended with like a 50-minute monologue talking about how Wanda's terrible for all the things she did, and then whatever. And I just don't think, I disagree with that.
Should it have a soliloquy at the end where Falcon shows up as Captain America and talks?
Could you imagine if it did something that on the nose?
Yeah. Which is, I mean, when I talked with a buddy of mine about Falcon and Winter Soldier, he even was like, "Why do we need Marvel to?" And he didn't quite like the ending, but he knows what they're trying to do conceptually. He's like, "Why do we need Marvel to espouse a form of morality?"
Why are you turning to Marvel
for your morality? Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense of all of this racial tension in the United States. I'm seeing all this stuff on the news. If only Marvel would come out with a project that would explain these things to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's what Dave Chappelle talked about back in 2005 with Where's Ja? Like, Where's Ja Rule? It's the same thing. Why do you need celebrities in Hollywood to spoon feed you what you should know and what you should do about race and morality, all these things? Like, entertainment should not be taking the place of your ethics professor or your pastor or your babysitter for your children.
And conversely, as you grow in media literacy, you'll be able to diverse what's healthy and what's not with what you're watching anyway. And so, like, when you're watching certain things that have problematic choices or decisions or people doing bad things, you'll be able to parse through that and make your own decisions without it overtly influencing you. Right. I just mentioned I'm watching Queen's Gambit. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I think I'm okay. I'm not going to learn to play chess and drink at the same time. I think I'll be okay. And the show, of course, is so much more than that, obviously. It's a great show. And so look forward to that episode.
Yeah. I'm not saying that like I'd want my Marvel stuff to be completely empty-headed, but it's nice when they make the shows and movies about something. And that's what I really liked about, not to keep hitting this drum, but like Daredevil has some overt religious themes in it. And I was just thinking today, actually, like there's talk about whether or not the devil exists in season 1, which is pretty heavy for a show where a guy beats up muggers in alleyways. But there's like, when you make it about something that really helps, it's just, I think at the same time, like, there is a difference between a show or movie. Part of it's Disney can never really take a stand on anything because they're trying to be media for everyone, versus every year when you look at what's nominated for Oscars, they're typically films that take very specific stances on issues and have set points of view that they really are trying to hit home, which that's polarizing. Parasite has a specific point of view it's trying to get across. I remember, what was it, Carol? What was the movie where when you went and saw in theaters, a portion of ticket sales went to like Planned Parenthood or something?
Oh, I don't know.
Kate Blanchett. But like, that movie had a very clear view on the world of morality that it was pushing unapologetically, because that's what the movie's about. But like, the problem with that is it's going to very quickly turn off part of your audience, which Disney's never going to do. So like, they can only do surface level, like their show dealing with race in America ends with a monologue about where they all talk about we should just shake hands and sing Kumbaya and sing We Are the World while we sway back and forth. That was as deep as the show could get, because they can't, they can only do one thing in one direction, or they can't go in any particular direction. They have to be as general as possible. So I don't know what you expect from Disney, who they're pushing out like 50 sequels to movies now, or they're just remaking their movies,
Right.
They're not gonna give you a big morality lecture.
And at the end of the day, it is just a company trying to make money, which is why only this year, and I guess you could say they wanted to do it last year, but only this year were they creating a massive amount of pop vinyls that were rainbow colored, which, I mean, they could have done that 20 years ago. I don't know. Where was Disney? Why were they silent, Disney, in 2001? Why didn't you say anything about 9/11, Disney? Come on. It's just crazy. Yeah, the discussion's often, I think the reason the discussion is had for this, and the reason this discussion went this far after just talking about Loki having one throwaway line where he's like, yeah, I've tried dating everybody.
Dating. I like this idea that he went on a series of dates. Yeah, he went on a series of Tinder dates, and some went for a couple months.
The concept that Loki's dating. Where's that miniseries? But this discussion keeps being had because people keep not knowing quite how to land about it. And I don't know if people feel free enough to just make their own decisions, especially in Christian circles. People are always so worried about what should I do and what should I not do? Who should I support and who should I not support? What show should I watch and what show should I not watch, and why? And so if you can just demonize specific things, then you don't watch it. And so they're just having to specifically demonize something. Yeah, it's deeply unfortunate that people just in the last several decades are demonizing homosexuality and demonizing abortion when, I mean, these are people that Jesus would be hanging out with. These are people who Jesus would be moving towards and loving, because that's what we want. We want to be loved. And that's the one big thing that we always question is possible in the fallen age, is that we're even lovable. I mean, when you get down to it, every single problem is, can we be loved? And then you're trying to make up for that love by doing something else. And like, that's kind of what the show is about, even, is just, can Loki be loved? And can Loki love? I mean, that's really the moment of decision at the end of the show is this even possible for Loki to love and to be loved? I guess we'll find out in season 2.
I think the more of the uncomfortable, like the Christian anxiety about these things is, art doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so the more you see things pop up in the media, the more that's sort of like indication of where we are at as a culture. And I think there's a desire I think it's almost think of like, if I can fight it at this plane, that'll fix it in like the larger issue. Because it's like so many of the things that we're sitting there like, oh, you watch this thing where they do this. Like, there was a point where they wouldn't do that. The famously Lucy and her husband, I haven't seen I Love Lucy in like so long, but like they slept in separate beds. Like that's specifically referenced in WandaVision,
Mm-hmm.
Like that's where the culture was at. You can call it repressive, but at the same time, like, the idea that you would see any sort of like flagrant sexual behavior anywhere else was like unheard of. And I'm not saying that was right or wrong. I'm just saying that was sort of a snapshot of where the American culture was at that time. And so as you see these things become more normal in your media and your art, that sort of shines a light into where the culture is. I think that makes people uncomfortable. And so they want to, and there's this Christian desire to fight back against sin, fight back against this stuff, which isn't a bad desire. I just think your efforts are better placed elsewhere where, like, why don't you, like, the culture wouldn't be producing these things if they weren't in the culture in the first place. So you should be going out, and the church should have been doing its job for the past like 30 or 40 years and making disciples of all nations. Then you wouldn't have this problem now, would you?
Right.
And so, like, I think, but there's a thing where it's like misplaced passion and frustration comes out in a thing of like, we're going to keep kids from buying M&M records, and that's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to save the children, and we're going to stop Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to stop Magic the Gathering or whatever. And that's not the problem. Like, the problem is people's hearts are evil and blinded by sin. And yeah, maybe there's one or two kids that, because they see it in movies, it's going to be a problem. But like, again, if the parents are doing their job, then the kids will, a movie's not going to turn a kid gay, or in a television show is going to turn a kid into a wizard or whatever it is you're worried about.
Right.
That's not how it works, So yeah, I think there's just this thing. And then so every time it's almost they lost another battle, like, oh, this show's got a gay character in it too. Oh, another one.
Bummer.
Another one's down, It's just like, well, that's that's where it's at. If you want a show that like really shows, my pastor and I had this ongoing conversation about what captures the zeitgeist of like the culture at the moment. And honestly, I think it's the show. Have you watched the show Schitt's Creek?
No, I haven't. My parents have, and they said it's really good.
It's a solid sitcom.
I've been thinking of checking it out because I'm just rewatching Arrested Development over and over and over, and I'd like to do something else.
Yeah, but like that's the show. I think that's a show that more captures the zeitgeist of the culture than anything else, which is there's multiple characters in the show that have, non-heterosexual sexualities. And like the relationships are treated not a big deal, just like characters sleep around. They have different relationships with different people. There's an episode where characters come out to his parents, and it turns out that the actual tension isn't that his parents are homophobic. It's that they're so disappointed that their son wouldn't tell them in the first place, which is a very nice thought. But it's just like I was watching it, and it's like there's nothing offensive in the show unless just seeing two men be in a relationship together is offensive to you. But like it's one of those things where like this is just where the culture is at. None of this is, there's no drama being mined out of the character's sexuality. That's just the same, like it's characterized and normalized as it would be any other relationship, which for some people is a massive victory, other people it's a massive loss. But like that's where the culture is at. And so like that's part of why I think it's so funny in a way that people are sitting there like a character in a Disney film in the background makes a comment that they have like a husband and when they should have a wife. It's just like, man, the culture's so far beyond that already. It's like, I don't know why you're treating Disney like it's like the last bastion of American morality or something. Like that's over. I had a conversation with Logan Sharp from the Reformed Gamers podcast. And like we greatly disagree on this one topic, which is I think the cultural war is over. I think it's gone. Like I think we lost it 20 years ago. And he contends that like the cultural war is still being fought because his point is like there's still ground to be gained. Like you can still make Christian films. You can still make Christian games. You can still, try and wrestle for the heart of America, so to speak, a little bit. I just don't think I think that's gone. I think that's lost.
I think the idea of a culture war is misguided, in my opinion. I think we're not called for a culture war. We're called to make disciples. And making disciples is by investing the love that the Lord has given us into other people. And so that's an independent thing. Now, you can do something broad, such as I'm going to make art projects that are specifically influenced by my Christian faith. But I just want to let you know a little secret. Everything you make is in your own image. And so everything you make will be coming from that perspective. And so when you're making something, it's just going to happen passively, that if you're basking and celebrating in the love that Christ is giving you, you're going to produce content that is that. It's just going to happen. That happens whether you're a carpenter just building a home or you're a podcaster just with a beard and who likes IPA. I am just such a stereotype. And that's just going to happen. And that's why media literacy is so important, because you get to observe those things in other people very naturally. And what's most important about that is that when I'm at work talking to my coworkers and I can talk about how this show is about existentialism and self-love and stuff like that, I can get into how I don't believe in existentialism as a worldview, and I can explain where my self-love comes from. It's a lot easier than it sounds. In all honesty, I believe it's just because the reason I say that is because it's like any other skill. You can learn it and it just takes time. And so it's not but the idea of a culture war, I don't know. That sounds like you're just basically doing the Crusades, but with thought. It's just a thought process. All the people who are typically on the right who are talking about a culture war and like to talk about 1984 all the time, even though they've most of the time never read it, they want to do 1984 style of war. They want to fight through thought. And that's just not how it works. If a friend tells me something, like the example I gave before of like a friend telling me the sins they've committed, my first thought is like, I have compassion for that. And I want to move towards that. And I want to help pull someone away from that and tell them, like, I love you. The alcohol doesn't love you. It may be the only thing that helps you feel better. But guess what? Love is going to make you feel better. That love that the Lord has to offer you. And I feel that that's probably a much more useful thing. But man, I really like this tangent. But let's be real here. timelines, baby. we want to talk timelines. People want to hear us talk timelines and expectations.
I was just gonna say King the Conqueror is in this show.
I wish Jonathan Majors wasn't told to just be acting cuckoo crazy. I wish Jonathan Majors was supposed to be maybe intimidating. But I know, Dan, you texted me back and said you liked that Kang was a bit more cuckoo crazy here instead of just, I guess, whatever Kang is usually. But I don't know. I don't read the comics. So
right.
I don't know.
I mean, King the Conqueror is not a character I'm super duper familiar with. I'm mostly familiar with him from some of his like appearances and like cartoons and things like that. We are getting into the point where outside of like when they bring in like X-Men and Fantastic Four characters, eventually we are getting into characters I don't know anything about. Like, I don't know anything about the Eternals or really much about Shang-Chi outside of his appearances in like other series. Like, or I think if I'm thinking Master of Kung Fu is the same character. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, Kang the Conqueror is a character I've always found him to be more like a cool looking character with some fan favorite power types. Like, he's a time traveler. He doesn't have any actual superpowers. He just has future tech that essentially is the same thing as having powers. Kind of like a little bit like some of the things like Booster Gold to an extent, but like what fans like about him is he's just a giant walking form of continuity where retroactively he's been established to be other characters in the villain Marvel's past. So, or sometimes when they need, when you need to fix a plot hole, oh, that was Kang, or this character, that was Kang, and that kind of thing.
Cue the Gene Parmesan.
Yeah,
joke.
Gene Parmesan, and just in a giant suit holding balloons or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. He's a firefighter at one point.
Yeah. It's so like for longtime comic book readers, that's fun because it's like a character. But I've always found it to be kind of bland in a little bit because outside of that, where the character gets fun for me is when like Iron Lad goes back in time to prevent himself from being evil. That kind of weird storytelling is interesting to me. So I like that kind of stuff. So part of why I like this version of the character is they're giving him a much more interesting motivation than in the comics where he's just a conqueror, like that's okay, fine. That's the same thing as Vandal Savage and all these other characters. That's fine, which is a DC character. But like the idea that like this version of the character, at least in this episode, so finally Loki and Sylvie get to the where the TVA founder is. Miss Minutes is there and it's terrifying. Miss Minutes is a great character voiced by the amazing Tara Strong, who's one of the best voice actresses to ever live. She is currently Harley Quinn. She is Raven in Teen Titans. She's Timmy Turner. She's Twilight Sparkle. She's just great. She's in tons of stuff. And so Miss Minutes just tells them that the boss is there, and the boss is just, the doors open up and there's just this kooky weird dude there. And he's like the CEO who's gone mad because he's just been alone in his office for all of eternity, just watching all of time.
Jeff Bezos, man, I'm telling you,
he's Jeff Bezos in 150 years, and he has printouts of the conversations that they're going to have because he's seen it all, and so he's like giggling a little bit when he dodges out of their attacks and stuff. It's really great stuff, and part of why this works for me is this is just one Kang. They established that there's a whole multiverse of other versions of himself. So don't worry, nerds.
But he's just the smartest one. He was able to, his backstory is awesome. I found out how to time travel. And so did my other versions. So we all met up. Some of them were bad. So we got a war. And it's just Kang in war with himself. And he's just the one who lived.
Which is kind of a thing in the comics. There's a bunch of different Kangs. But in the comics, it's more because of all the time traveling he's done. It just messes with it. This is just like full multiverse. There's all these different Kangs everywhere. And the implication is that this is a guy he's a guy doing all his pruning. He's countless people he's murdered and destroyed. He's destroyed entire timelines. But he's the good guy.
Just to prevent, basically.
And the guys coming after him are way worse. That stuff is really cool. And so I like this character has better motivation. I think this version of the character is more fun. Jonathan Majors is having a lot of fun. There's a whole sequence where Sylvie and Loki start fighting. And he's just watching them excitedly. And he's like, sort of looks like, oh, like when they eventually embrace and kiss, like he's fangirling out behind them about it. Like this is a show to him. He's just watching time unfold in front of him. That stuff is really fun. And of course, the implications are deep as well. So eventually, he just lets himself be killed. He's just like, fine, kill me. But if you kill me, something worse is going to happen. Because what he wants is for Loki and Sylvie to take care of the TVA. He thinks they'd be great as the boss. Sylvie just wants to kill him.
Yeah, total Willy Wonka situation. Yeah,
It's Willy Wonka would be much better if it ended with him just stabbing Willy Wonka and taking his factory.
right.
And Willy's just like, "See you soon," you know.
Yeah.
And the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka walks out from behind, like, "I'm so much worse."
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sylvie kills him. Loki escapes to the TVA as all these other timelines start coming out because she killed Kang, the one above all is what he's called. He who remains. The one above all is a different character. So she kills him. And fans have pointed out that if you play the final episode of WandaVision and the same time as Loki, it all lines up.
How do you mean?
It's like the moment that Wanda is like going full Scarlet Witch lines up with when he gets killed and everything or something like that.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
How would they know? Like, is there cues in the timeline that say like...
I don't know. I think they just played the episode at the same time. So, yeah. So all these timelines diverge. The timeline's going crazy. And Loki's running to Owen Wilson like, you got to stop. Everything's crazy. And they're like, who are you? Turns around. Turns out he's at a different TVA with Kang the Conqueror statue there. So Loki's in a different timeline. Sylvie's killed Kang, and who knows what she's doing. And now the multiversal madness begins. So it's one of those things where Marvel's found this perfect way to insulate themselves from some criticism. Because the fans, you might as well have forgotten what happened the first 5 episodes, because that's all I was going to talk about.
Right.
Like, oh man, is Kang going to show up and blah, blah, blah? Is Loki going to be a villain? Is Sylvie going to be a villain? This, like, how many Spider-Men are there going to be? You know, it's like all they're going to, that's all they're going to talk about. Yeah. Like, they forgot that like any of the other things happen in the show, basically, you know. I thought it was good. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm negative about it. Like, and I think this stuff's cool. I'm nerding out. I'm texting my friends like, what do you think's going to happen? You know? Yeah. And that's what I want out of a TV show. So there you go. But I hope that subsequent seasons, I hope that the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange movie, and the Spider-Man movie
are good.
Wrap up most of the stuff to an extent, or reset the continuity. You know, they bring in Daredevil or whatever, and then Loki seasons 2 and 3 can then just be a show about whatever and not just be part of the ongoing chapter.
We can finally get Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4 and it would be canon.
That'd be so cool. I really hope that part of the deal bringing Sam Raimi in for Doctor Strange is just like, okay, but what if we also did this? And so like,
what if you gave me back my Spider-Man instead of like the way you took it away from me in 3?
It's, some people think that Morbius takes place in Raimi's Spider-Man universe or something.
Well, it has that poster on the wall. That's not the current.
It has Raimi Spider-Man on the wall, and the Daily Bugle stuff that you see is like the Daily Bugle from Raimi Spider-Man.
Theory time. All right, I texted you this. I texted you this, and I thought because we see Kang on the wall, the previous Kang, the He Who Remains, I guess is how we'll have to talk about him. He put the 3 timekeepers up in place of himself for some reason. So I was like, if Sylvie's in control, did Sylvie decide, all right, I'll just put Kang up as the statue, and so Sylvie's in control? Or because the timelines branch and timey-wimey stuff can be immediate, the second Kang died, did a new Kang just show up and take over and just toss Sylvie away? Or there's even like, is that mansion that they were in, was that actually Kang's mansion where he did his sciencey experiments, or was that the previous timekeeper's place? Because there's the 3 statues with the 4th one collapsed. So like, is the 4th one still alive, or is there deep lore where like the 3 knocked out the 4? I don't know. What are you thinking before we get into our recommendations, I guess?
I don't do theories.
Okay.
My thing is with this type of stuff is, I feel like I say that phrase a lot.
This type of stuff.
So far, they've already drifted so far away from like what we know about the characters that it's tough to make any sort of predictions based on established like character stuff. I think it's a possibility. I really feel like he just ended up in a timeline with one of the more evil Kangs in it. And I think we might see Sylvie again in Multiverse of Madness as like a sort of MacGuffin character, where I think Loki's going to show up and he's going to try and work with Doctor Strange because what he wants is to rescue Sylvie.
Yeah.
And so I think Sylvie will be trying to either she's captured by some of the Kangs, or she's actively trying to fight them.
Or the reverse. Because I
or she's a villain that Kang's trying to stop her,
or Sylvie's trying to save Loki. Because I think it would be a bummer for them to turn Sylvie into the damsel in distress.
Yeah. The only reason I'm saying that is that Loki's been confirmed to be in Multiverse of Madness, so he's the only actor. He's been confirmed to appear, so I don't know if that or is she's just on a quest to find her, and just not that she's in distress. She's just gone.
Yeah,
and so she's doing her own thing, like she has been doing throughout the show. Yeah, because it would be a huge shame if she just ends up being like
save me,
essentially the lamp that they need to grab, or whatever that phrase is. But I agree with that. I think. That's what I'm kind of leaning towards. I don't think she's in control of the TVA, or if she is, it was brief because the other Kangs
could just show up immediately.
Exactly. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think all these divergent timelines is the impetus for what they're going to do next. I also think that this is how they're going to. I think this might be how they introduce mutants into the universe. Where because of like the changing of the timelines and the destruction of the multiverse, or like taking all these timelines and mushing them back in the same one might cause mutations.
Oh yeah, totally.
I think that could be a thing. Or the Eternals will introduce mutants, which would be kind of boring. I also think this is how they're going to like pick and choose what things from other continuities to bring in, which would break my heart a little bit. But like, I think this is how they're going to bring in the Netflix characters. I think if they want to keep any of the X-Men actors, this would be how they would do it. Or if they want to bring over any of the Spider-Man stuff, like if they want to permanently have Jamie Foxx be Electro, this is how they're going to do it, is trying to fix all the timelines. I also think this is unfortunately how they're going to retcon events from previous movies they don't like, or bring back actors who have died, which would just make me upset because now death really doesn't mean anything because you can just bring in people's variants and stuff.
Well, death would mean specific versions die.
Yeah,
that's viable because I mean that's what ruined Endgame for me is the Thanos I liked dies.
Is dead.
Like the Thanos that was compelling, and then the new Thanos was not actually all that interesting. The one that they had. So
yeah, I think too that Loki season 2 it seems like it's going to be first he's going to have to win over Owen Wilson again, which is kind of dumb, but we're going to see them try and fix the multiverse. Like season 2 and 3 might just be, housekeeping, where they're just like cleaning up all the aftershocks of all this nonsense, which might lead it into being the show that I've said earlier that I want. But I also worry that they're going to follow the formula again, where there's going to be some other variant they're chasing, or there's some other mysterious threat that they need to deal with. Maybe Nightmare for the Nightmare Realm is causing havoc or something because they opened up a rift in space and time, or whatever. And that to me would be kind of boring unless it leads them on a wild goose chase where they have to investigate all these other timelines and the events there are fun and it's wacky. But that's all I got for theories because, who knows? Every theory I've had so far has been wrong. So I don't know if I want to keep theorizing.
So what kind of recommendation do you have for us today?
Other than this show, which was great. I'm going to divert a little bit from our usual commentary thing. I'm going to diversify my commentary recommendation to get more broad and recommend a study Bible, if that is okay. I think that study Bible, because I was just thinking about it because I bought a new one the other day. I think a good study Bible is a good backbone for any biblical library. I know some people don't like study notes. People don't like writing in their Bible. They just prefer the text, which I think is admirable. But I think a good study Bible gives you enough additional information to chew on, while kind of leaving things open a little bit for your own interpretation, because I think the dangerous study Bibles is rather than reading and like thinking about it or even like praying about it, is you just immediately treat the study notes like they're also scripture.
Right. You read the footnotes all the time.
Yeah. So I think that's dangerous to an extent. And so I personally use the MacArthur Study Bible. That's like my go-to study Bible with the NASB. I also use the Reformation Study Bible and the ESV. But none of those are what I am recommending today, because I'm just going to roll over to I actually have a whole shelf of just Bibles. That's a weird thing to brag about, I know. But
would you recommend coffee stain or no coffee stain version?
I mean, it gives it character because that's the Bible that you've been using,
That's right.
I actually recommended this Bible recently in the Reformed groups. Can't remember which one. Anyway, it was a book one. So it is called The Life Connections Study Bible. And what it is, I have it in the CSB translation, which some people might not like that so much. And what makes this different from other study Bibles is it's designed for like a small group leader. So what it does instead of traditional study notes is it throughout all of Scripture, it has an opening prompt that you can use. It has things to consider. It has study questions you can ask the group. It has general summaries of what each chapter and stuff means with some footnotes. Typically, though, the footnotes are aimed at like helping explain what some of the original language is and stuff like that for a group leader. It's very unique in that way where it's not so much a Bible filled with like copious notes about this and that. It's designed to help you think and apply Scripture. So it includes application questions, group discussion questions, specific pointed questions you can ask. So if you're somebody who has to do a lot of Bible studies or small groups, or even if you're just in a bind, which I've been in where someone suddenly asks you to lead a group, it's a great quick one. I actually, and I'm going to say something that may sound like weird for a recommendation. I don't think a lot of the questions and prompts they throw in there themselves are great, but I like that they get me thinking, and I often come up with my own questions that way from reading it. Also, it's just a nice Bible. The paper's good. I got this nice binding. The book and chapter introductions are great. It's just a fun study Bible, especially for somebody who already owns a bunch of them, or it's just a nice addition to your library. So the Life Connection Study Bible. We should really get a sponsorship or something.
Hey, I'd be down for that.
And I'm assuming you're going to ask me about another.
I can cut in and then you can do your normal one after.
Oh, yeah, you go ahead, man.
I was going to recommend people play Pokemon Go. I play Pokemon Go all the time. I play it basically every day. If you don't know, because you lived under a rock in 2016, which probably wasn't a bad idea because that was the election. But in 2016, Pokemon Go came out, and it's basically a Pokemon game that you play on your phone, and you walk around in real life, and then the game picks up where you are, and then Pokemon are spawned in the area, and you can catch them. And it's as simple as just, toss a ball and you get them. But there's like a really fun system of like how you can battle against other players. There are direct battles. I don't find them very interesting other than when I need to farm items, but there are gyms that are basically landmarks. So there's landmarks that are picked up in the game all around, and you can spin them for items or battle for them. And you place Pokemon in there, but depending on what team you are, there's 3 teams, blue, red, and yellow. You're able to take them for your team and you get yourself items. The game's just really fun though, because it gets you outside. My wife and I play all the time, and we'll go on walks and play. We'll have fun kind of capturing gyms in our area. You kind of pick up on players who live in your area because you see the same names. So like there's like a rival on my street that like always has this one church down the like 1 block away that like there was one day like I'm editing the podcast. I see that's yellow. So I go out for the walk real quick, take the gym, go back home. I sit down, and he got it right back immediately. So then I walked back out again and did it. But like this weekend, one of the reasons we rescheduled to record today instead of on the weekend was because there was an event going on. So my wife and I went out, and we were out for like over, I think 10 or 11 hours walking around at this one park. And like we're playing Pokemon, and so are several other people. And we were catching a lot of rare Pokemon because that's what the event was. And it's just nice to be outside, obviously, but it's also nice to be outside and like there's sort of like this like you're doing it with other people, but you're not doing it with them because like I'm mostly just talking to my wife. But I could have gotten and talked to other people, traded Pokemon, and I've done that before. I've communicated with other people. I talk to people. That's something I do. Like there was one time I went out to the park and had to complete a raid, and it was for a specific Pokemon. And so I just asked some people who I knew were playing Pokemon. I was like, hey, do you guys mind joining me real quick to do this? And then we were chatting, and then at some point we parted. But it's just nice. And there's just nice community-based aspects to that. And even after we got back, my wife and I were like, hey, that would have been kind of fun to text all our friends and be like, hey, my wife and I are going to do this for several hours, basically. Would you like to meet us at the park? You can download the game. It's totally free, and we'll get you started. And I even said to my wife, like, I would spot people $5 just to get them the starter items that are like basically all mobile games do that help you jumpstart. It's really cool. It's fun. And it was nice to see people of all types out there. I mean, we're seeing old couples. Every time we go out, we've seen old couples playing Pokemon Go. We've seen kids and fathers, and we saw like a mother-daughter. And I think I even saw like a grandma and her granddaughter out. And there's just like a lot of fun connection going on. And so totally cool. I absolutely love Pokemon Go. and totally recommend it. And now's really a really good time to get on, because if you played in 2016, you know the server sucked and it ate your battery. Doesn't do that now. The game runs way better, and there's just a lot more fun stuff to do. So that's my recommendation. What is your general recommendation, Dan? So
some of you may have, if you got this service called Netflix, some of you may have seen.
What's that?
So it's on your computer, and it's kind of like television.
Can I watch the Emmys on that?
Sure. And if you can't, just angrily tweet it at Netflix, because they messed up, and so they owe you an Emmy.
Sidebar: isn't it crazy that the Emmys, which only streams on like a normal TV channel, like almost all of the Emmy nominations are streaming service shows?
30 of them are Disney, like for like it's WandaVision or something.
Yeah, WandaVision's killing it.
So yeah, Netflix, it's on your computer, and you can watch television programs on there, like Supermarket Sweep.
Wow,
and
that's cool.
It's great. And one of the shows that they've been pushing hard on there is a show called Manifest. And for those of you who have not watched it, Manifest is about a bunch of people board a plane, and then while they're in the air, the plane just disappears and suddenly sets back down, I think like 5 years later. And none of the people on the plane have aged, and they also all have some sort of weird heightened ability. And so the drama comes from the way their lives have changed while they were gone, as well as what happens with the abilities they've apparently gotten while on the plane. It stars a guy who played Prince Charming on Once Upon a Time. Some of you hearing me describe that may say, hey, that sounds really similar to a different show that already aired. And that show is called The 4400. Now, I have only watched the first 2 episodes of both The 4400 and Manifest. And I'm here to tell you that so far, 4400 is a little bit better. It has better characters. It has much more interesting and already costly things happen as a result of the event. The 4400, the difference is that rather than a plane, it's just random people of starting in the 1940s up through 2003 just disappear and then come back in 2004, which is funny because all the technology's outdated now. Look at those idiots in their flip phones. But also, like, some of the things that happen are just much sadder. Like, there's a guy who got taken in the 70s, and he's literally on his way to pick up his wife for like the 30th anniversary dinner or whatever. And so he comes back and he just wants to see his wife, and she's like in a old folks home, and like the moment they left is like her traumatic event. So she's just kind of sitting by a window, constantly asking when he's going to show up to pick her up for dinner. And there's already immediately much sadder, more real things happening in the show, and the abilities make kind of more sense, and it's just a better show overall. And weirdly, some of the special effects look better, and the show is like 15 years older than Manifest. It's weird. So my recommendation is, if you're thinking about watching Manifest, watch the 4400 instead. It's pretty good 2.5 episodes in.
Where is it? On Netflix too?
It is also on Netflix. So
that's awesome.
It's also on the computer. So
also on the computer. Good. I have a computer. I'm using one right now. It's pretty cool.
Just picture one of those old Mac, like ones you saw in like the school library. Just
the like pink or like,
yeah, like
clear
pink and
the
computers inside,
like your old Game Boy Color.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirleyan, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the independent theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.